Welcome to a new day, a new opportunity, a new podcast. Who knows? Today could bring an unexpected chance, a meaningful conversation, or a small step towards something great. Today might be the day something changes for the better. Thank you for joining me. Hosna is here, and welcome to Her Voice podcast. Have you ever noticed how often people tell us to be realistic? Choose a stable career. Don't take unnecessary risks. Think logically. People like us don't do things like that. Logic has become the language of adulthood. It sounds responsible, mature, and safe. And to be fair, logic matters. It helps us solve problems, make plans, and avoid obvious mistakes. Many of the most meaningful changes in human history started with someone who appeared irrational. Imagine telling people 100 years ago that one day humans would carry tiny devices in their pockets that could connect them to almost anyone in the world. It would have sounded absurd. Imagine telling people that a young athlete from a small town could become a global icon, or that an unknown artist could build a worldwide audience from their bedroom. At first, extraordinary ideas often sound unreasonable, because logic is usually based on what already exists. Vision is based on what could exist. And society tends to reward conformity more quickly than originality. From childhood, many of us learn an invisible rule: don't stand out too much, blend in, follow the path, do what others expect. Different is risky, different invites criticism, different raises questions. When everyone around you is walking in one direction, choosing another path can feel lonely. Psychologists call this normative social influence, the tendency to conform because we want acceptance and fear rejection. Research has consistently shown that people often adjust their opinions or behaviors simply to fit into a group even when they privately disagree. Think about it for a moment. Sometimes the greatest obstacle to becoming ourselves isn't lack of talent, it's the fear of being judged, the fear of hearing, "Who do you think you are?" But here's an uncomfortable truth: the people we admire today were often misunderstood yesterday. Scientists who challenged accepted theories, entrepreneurs who invested in ideas others dismissed, artists whose work was considered strange, writers whose manuscripts were rejected dozens of times. They weren't successful because they ignored reality. They succeed because they saw possibilities that others couldn't yet recognize. There is a difference between being unrealistic and being visionary. Being unrealistic means refusing to acknowledge facts. Being visionary means seeing potential beyond current limitations. One rejects reality, the other expands it, and maybe that's where balance begins. Because this is an argument against logic. It's an argument against allowing logic to become a prison. Sometimes society uses the word realistic when it actually means familiar. Sometimes people discourage your dreams not because your dreams are impossible, but because your dreams challenge their understanding of what is possible, and that can be uncomfortable, especially in communities where safety is valued above experimentation. In places where people have experienced hardship, choosing uncertainty makes sense. Stability matters, security matters, responsibility matters as well, but so do curiosity, creativity, and ambition. The future has always belonged in part to people willing to ask unusual questions. What if? Why not? Is there another way? Think about your own life. How many decisions have you made because they genuinely reflected who you are? And how many were influenced by the fear of disappointing others? There is no shame in choosing a conventional path if it aligns your values. But there is sadness in abandoning your authentic self simply to avoid criticism. Because no matter what you do, someone will have an opinion. If you dream too big, you're unrealistic. If you play it safe, you're unambitious. If you change careers, you're irresponsible. If you stay where you are, you lack courage. You cannot build a life around the constantly shifting expectations of other people. At some point, you have to decide whose voice matters the most, the crowd's or your own conscience. Being different doesn't always mean doing something dramatic. Sometimes it means speaking honestly when silence is easier. Sometimes it means pursuing a passion others don't understand. Sometimes it means refusing to define success the same way everyone else does. And sometimes it simply means giving yourself permission to evolve, to change your mind, to outgrow old identities, to become someone new. History rarely remembers the people who perfectly blended in. It remembers those who contributed something distinct, something genuine, something undeniably human. So if you have ever felt out of place because your dreams seem unusual, if you've ever been called unrealistic because you wanted more from life, if you've ever wondered whether it's safer to hide parts of yourself just to belong, remember this. Logic can tell you where the roads already lead. Imagination is what builds new roads. You don't have to choose between wisdom and wonder. You can be thoughtful and ambitious, grounded and creative, practical and hopeful. The goal isn't to reject reason. The goal is to make sure that fear doesn't disguise itself as a reason. Because some of the most extraordinary chapters of human history were written by ordinary people who decided that fitting in was less important than being true to who they are. And perhaps the question isn't, is it logical to be different? Maybe the better question is, what part of myself am I sacrificing just to appear logical? And if the answer is too much, maybe it's time to give yourself permission to stand out. Not recklessly, not arrogantly, but authentically. Because the world doesn't need only people who know how things work, it also needs people brave enough to imagine how things could be better. And sometimes those are very same people. Thank you for listening. That would be it for today's episode. And until next time, take care of yourself and keep moving forward.